The governor of Puerto Rico is pushing to have the island's Democratic presidential primaries moved up from June to March. Governor Ricardo Rossello filed a new bill to the island's legislature to make sure the territory's needs are not forgotten during the 2020 presidential race.
So far, only Senators Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar and former HUD Secretary Julian Castro have visited the island during the campaign.
Joining us now from Washington is Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rossello. Good to see you, Governor.
Good to be here, Vlad, and thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. So let's get you to explain to our viewers why you feel it's important to have the primaries held earlier.
Well, as everybody has seen, the recovery in Puerto Rico has been slower than expected. We've been fighting for equal treatment for the people of Puerto Rico for quite some time now. We voted for statehood in 2 occasions in the past 7 years, but still we are treated as second-class citizens. It is my view that moving the primaries forward in an event where Puerto Ricans can vote in the general election will give us a better platform to explain some issues that are not only important in Puerto Rico, but also cover the whole national spectrum. We're talking about equality, voter disenfranchisement, resiliency, climate change. All of those issues are front and center in Puerto Rico, and I think it'll be interesting for Puerto Rico to be a major issue in this coming Democratic primaries.
So far we mentioned only 3 candidates have visited Puerto Rico thus far. Have you heard anything that you like from any of the candidates?
Well, it's been 3, but comparing to previous primaries, really that's record-setting in Puerto Rico. And our expectation is that others are going to come as well. Yes, we have certainly heard support for equal treatment for the U.S. citizens in Puerto Rico. I think that is the underlying issue over here, that they want recovery funds to finally arrive to the island. Those are, I think, 2 of the core issues that we want because, once again, for our viewers that don't know, Puerto Ricans, of course, are U.S. citizens, but we can't vote on general elections. We don't have representatives that have voting rights in Congress, and therefore we are very much limited when it comes to the resources that come to our island. For example, we get about 1/3 of what the average U.S. citizen would get on a state basis for health care. What we want and what we aspire to have is equality, and I think that having now a consciousness all across the nation about Puerto Rico, about us being U.S. citizens but being treated differently, this is the one unique opportunity for us to move this item forward.
And to that point, Governor, one of the issues you've been pushing for is statehood. This has come up quite often since Puerto Rico was first, when Puerto Ricans were first given United States citizenship, which, if I recall, my American history class was 1917, right? So that issue has been front and center for Puerto Ricans ever since then. How would, in addition to some of the things that you just mentioned, statehood help the island?
Well, in several fronts. Number one, it would give the island more stability. Number 2, we would get equal footing on federal resources. I mean, we don't participate equally on many of the federal programs, and the ones that we do, we get a fraction of what other states would get. Number 3, we would enjoy political power. Right now, we don't have a direct vote for the president, or we don't have voting members in Congress. That is why we need to get support in a surrogate basis for Puerto Rico. So it is a game changer, and I think the people of Puerto Rico are clearly seeing this. That is why in the last 7 years we've had 2 plebiscites. The people of Puerto Rico have overwhelmingly voted for statehood, and now it's a matter of Congress taking action, and of course the president signing that into action. And what we want to do with this primary season and with this upcoming election is to make sure that all candidates have a strong position on this. If you are interviewing any Congress member, if you're interviewing any decision maker, ask them what their position on equality for Puerto Rico is. Do they support statehood, which is the will of the people of Puerto Rico, or do they reject it? And I think that will allow us to pave a path forward and to have what we aspire as a nation, to have a more complete and just nation.
You know, one of the things that Hurricane Maria did is raise the consciousness of the country about the needs of Puerto Rico. But then out of that came another discussion. Puerto Rico's infrastructure was pretty terrible before the hurricane. The debt was pretty bad before the hurricane. It went from in the millions to around 2000 to the billions. And the conversation had to do with what should the mainland U.S. do to help Puerto Rico? Shouldn't they be able to take care of their own debt? What do you say to people who still don't quite understand how Puerto Rico found itself in this position?
Well, I would tell them that I arrived as governor about 2.5 years ago, and we were, as you established, on a fiscal crisis, on a debt crisis, economic decay for a couple of years, but we've been making actions. We've established a lot of transformation reforms on the energy sector. On the education sector, we've reduced the cost of government by 11% in the time that we've been here. We've restructured debt so that my administration is the first one in modern history to actually reduce the debt load in Puerto Rico by 10%. And we want to keep on doing more. But that's one part of it, and we recognize that there are actions we have to take. We're taking those actions. But in order for them to have full effect, we need to be treated equally as U.S. citizens. Otherwise, we're always going to be lagging behind. Look, if we have a healthcare system where we have to treat the same diseases, the same kinds of problems in Puerto Rico as any other states, but we get a third of the influx of funding, there's no stability looking forwards if those funds are even going to get to Puerto Rico, then you have a big problem, not only on the healthcare side, on the budgetary side. So what we're saying is, look, there are these inherent differences in Puerto Rico that are a byproduct of this inequality. Puerto Rico became a part of the United States again in 1898. We got citizenship in 1917. You're correct there. There were some changes done afterwards to supposedly allow the gap of inequality to shrink. But what has happened in the past couple of decades is that gap of inequality has increased. The only way that we can shrink that gap, then we can do justice to 3.2 million U.S. citizens that go to war in very high numbers, that are proud U.S. citizens, is to make them full U.S. citizens, not second-class citizens. And the only way to do that is by allowing Puerto Rico to become the 51st state of the nation.
Yeah, Puerto Rico does face some restrictions that states don't have to contend with. I'm wondering, Governor, have you heard any of the candidates talk about the Jones Act? And would you like to see that sort of lifted or reversed or modified?
Yes, some of the candidates have talked about it. There are different levels towards this. We, as a matter of fact, we submitted a petition of waiver for the Jones Act in transporting natural gas to Puerto Rico. That would be both beneficial for the United States mainland and for Puerto Rico. We need to reduce our energy costs in Puerto Rico, aside from modernizing our energy grid. But this is one unique opportunity where we see that we can be getting instruments of economic growth for our island without having to cost the taxpayer any money. And as a matter of fact, bringing more business to the United States. So there are different positions among this. My position is anything that will allow commerce to be more effective in Puerto Rico, that will reduce the cost of the goods that we're getting on the island, is certainly something that will help our economic growth and our quality of life.
And just to remind people, the Jones Act manages shipping to the island, and as a result, a lot of the goods that come to the island are hit with sort of very high tariffs, making things very, very expensive on the island.
Yeah. And Governor, to the points that you've been making, you're speaking today at an investment summit in Washington, D.C. How are you positioning some of the challenges that you and the rest of our fellow citizens in Puerto Rico are facing to some of these potential investors?
Well, here's the good news. We are doing so many things on the local level for structural reforms that already are having good results, that if we get the resources that we should be getting to modernize our infrastructure and energy grid, we are in a very unique position to become one of the most exciting places to invest. Puerto Rico is beautiful. I know I'm biased, but it's a beautiful island with beautiful people. But at the same time, we have unique opportunities for economic growth. Puerto Rico has the most competitive laws for exporting services in all of the nation, has the most competitive laws for medical doctors to come to our island and stay there. We have a toolkit of incentives that is comparable to none when we're talking about innovation and so forth. And on a new component on the 2017 tax reform, the opportunity zones, which is a unique space to invest and to take frozen investment and channel it into areas that need development. Well, Puerto Rico will be positioned in a way that's more competitive to any other state. So really, we have a unique set of opportunities to move forward if we get treated equally on the policy side or even just fairly, then all of these other things that are moving forward will position Puerto Rico to become an island that's open for business, that can connect the rest of the Americas. And in my view, and in view of what's going on with global climate change and the effects that we're having right now in Puerto Rico, become the island of innovation for resiliency, moving forwards in rebuilding towards the future. So I'm very excited about it. We just need support, both on the pragmatical side of things and on the ideological side of things. Look, how can we if we cherish the values of democracy, equality, civil rights in the United States, how can we have an island that has 3.2 million U.S. citizens that go to war, that work hard, be treated as a lesser citizen? That is just not consistent with what I think are the values of our nation, and I think we need to make that change as soon as possible.
Governor Ricardo Rossello, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And a reminder, you can stream our CBSN originals, Puerto Rico, The Exodus After Hurricane Maria, right now on CBSNews.com.